When the mission demands muscle, you don't send a ship, you send a beast. The M2 Hercules. Drop heavy, hit harder.
Hello and welcome back to Star Citizen. My name is Evenlease, and today on 10 Minutes More or Less Ship Review, right behind me, the Crusader M2 Hercules. Let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, welcome back to another review. Thank you WinRAR42, Cypher1, and Archangel8 for assisting with this, flying the ship and occupying the guns. Really amazing, appreciate it. Now, the Crusader M2 Hercules, a ship I have not reviewed before, so thank you to everybody that has requested it. This ship here is quite a big girl, and I will say, again, we're going to start with the components. You do have two size 3 power plants, military grade C. You have two size 3 shield generators, military grade B, and then you have two size 3 coolers, military grade C, as well as one size 3 quantum drive, military grade C. So it's a pretty decent amount of military grade components. None of them are A, of course, which is just too bad, but it is a good amount of components, and they're, size 3, so they're going to be doing quite a bit for you. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this ship and its cost. You're sitting at $520 on the pledge store, or if you were to buy it in game, it is $29,484,000 aUEC. So you're wondering, well, why is this thing such a hefty price tag? Because you can pretty much do anything in this ship. You can do bounty hunts to, a limit because of its maneuverability. You can definitely do package deliveries, whenever that happens. And then you can do cargo, tons of cargo, or military vehicle transportation as this ship is meant to be, used for. While it can have a massive cargo grid, and you could probably put a lot more cargo in the ship than even what is stated, this ship here is the middle class ship out of all three, the C2, the M2, and the A2. And this one here is the up-armored military vehicle transport, compared to the C2 being a dedicated freight hauler and the A2 being a bomber with size 10 bombs. So that's your big difference between the three. The C2 will have less health, less armor in the end, while the M2 has a lot more health and in the future a lot more armor than something like the C2. Now, this ship does have a 25-minute claim time, or if you're to expedite it, 8 minutes. It's, enough to get a couple double dogs and, reset your spawn and get some more drinks and ammo. Then the pilot now has control over that chin turret, giving it a total of 5,122 burst pilot damage per second due to the two size 5 M7A laser cannons, one on each side of the top of the ship there, and then the two size 4 M6A laser cannons that the pilot now has control over on that nose, as long as the co-pilot seat is unoccupied. So if you have people with you, tell them, hey, stay out of that seat, I want that gun, and you should be all set. Now, there is two remote turrets that can only be controlled one at a time due to the weird seat arrangement on this ship. You have a total of pilot seat, co-pilot seat, turret operator, but then you have a turret under the nose and then two remote turrets. So you kind of have an imbalance there because you can only operate the two back turrets one at a time, which means you're not going to have the greatest coverage. But those remote turrets, when being used, if it was at the same time, would be a total of 3,686 remote burst damage per second due to the two size 4 M6A laser cannons and the two size 4 CF447 rhinos. So this ship doesn't have like a fire problem issue, it just has like a seat and control of the gun issue, which is honestly too bad, but that goes for the C2 as well. Now, taking a look at the shield generation, like I said, you have two size 3 shield generators, and it comes stock with the full block military grade B shields, giving you a total of 104,400 quadrant shield. So it is a quadrant shield, which means you should be able to, put a little bit more shield generation on the side that you think you're going to be attacked more, allowing it to survive a little bit longer before that shield goes down. And then you got to rely on your ship HP, which, by the way, you do have 20,000 more ship HP than the C2, which is quite amazing. So you're sitting at 101,820 ship HP. Again, that's 101,820 ship HP, which is a phenomenal amount for a ship. But, the bigger the ship, the more HP it should have, right? Because it should be able to take more of a hit, especially a ship that's supposed to be an up-armored military transport. So if you were going to ask me, opinion-wise, I think this ship should be closer to the 200,000 range on the HP itself, just because it doesn't have maneuverability. The firepower is somewhat limited due to that maneuverability, as well as the lack of seats and control of those guns. So for a military transport, dropping off heavy machinery, you're not going to be able to take too many hits once your shield is down, or if you're getting hit by ballistics, that's going to be a nightmare as well. Even with ballistics penalty, it's still going to hit your hull and start doing some major damage to you right off the bat. Now, this ship does have a top SCM speed of 160 with a 320 forward boost and a 170 backwards boost with a top nav speed of 950. Definitely a little on the slower side of things, but it's not too terribly slow. Just always surprising when you see a ship like this with such massive engines and then it moves at 160, meters a second. Now, this ship does have a pitch yaw roll of 20, 18, 30, which again, it's not going to be outmaneuvering anything out there. With a boosted 30, 27, 60, it's definitely not the bounty hunter it used to be. Now, it could still do that in the PvE realm, but I definitely wouldn't use this in any sort of PvP sense. Now, you do have 50 flares and 40 decoys. It looks like a size 2, decoy generator, which is good, allowing you to just throw out a lot of flares when needed, hopefully protecting this ship from any sort of missile attack. And then you have 132 SU of hydrogen fuel and 6.6 SU of quantum fuel, which means you're going to be going everywhere without ever having to touch your fuel tank, which is quite nice. Now, you do have the ability to carry a ton of cargo, like I said, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's less cargo than the C2 and more cargo than the A2. They, for some reason, limited the amount of cargo the M2 could carry, even though the interior specifications are literally no different than the C2, but they put in an invisible wall that basically says, we really don't want you to be able to carry as much as the C2, because then what's the point of the C2? So that's kind of the reason why they did that. And now you have the M2 being able to carry 522 SCU of cargo on the grid, if you were to, go ahead and do that. Now, you could obviously carry more than that if you go off grid, which is probably what you're going to end up doing with this ship. So let's go ahead and take a look at the interior, starting with, of course, the exterior here. You have 3 entrances to this ship. You have the front ramp, the back ramp, and then, of course, you have the elevator that comes out of the bottom of the ship over there. But for now, we're going to go ahead and take the top ramp here, or the front ramp, and make our way into the cargo hold, where you carry that 522 SCU of cargo, or you carry some ground vehicles like the Tonk, like the Ballista, like the Storm, or a multitude of any other ground vehicle, as well as some aerial vehicles like the Razor and many other things. So quite a phenomenal thing that this ship is. It really is awesome with what it can carry. Now, I will say sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain getting a, ship in here just because of the angle of these doors and whatnot, but it's definitely possible. Now, once you're in here, you would take this elevator to go to the next floor, or take the ladder like a sane person because the elevator takes way too long. And you have a nice little relay station here. Gotta love that. And then over there is Star Citizen. Don't worry, it's a little buggy. Now, we're gonna go ahead and make our way up the the ladder here and head to the second floor, where basically everything is. And I mean everything for this ship. So starting off right here, you have, it says access panel 2. So you got an access panel, life support. So you're gonna have a lot of your components right down the middle here, and you can go ahead and open that up. I'm gonna go ahead and close this. But you also have your storage units. So it says storage unit, hit F, and you can go ahead and store a lot of things, pretty much everything you ever wanted to in these storage boxes. Let me go ahead and close this. Now, another big difference with the M2 variant is this is considered, like I said, the military dropship variant. And this is where this changes on the interior. Here is where you have the auxiliary crew department, which has a ton of drop seats, a total of 12, just to, let you know, which is honestly quite ridiculous. Why is it on the second floor? I have no idea, but nobody in their right mind is using this ship to drop off troops like this, when you have so many better options that are much smaller. But inside of here, you have a shower. So, when one of these guys starts to really reek it up, you just tell him to get in the shower. And then you have a nice little kitchen area here. And it's just, it's nice, it's interesting, but until we get some sort of civilian contracts, there's really no point to this room, in my opinion. Nobody's really going to be using it for that. Another relay station. Gotta love that. And then once you walk through this door, you have quite the armory. You have a lot of weapon storage. Rack here, big rack for the big weapons. You have a nice little bench to sit down and make sure you're all dressed up. Another big rack, more weapons, and then a ton of suit lockers here on the wall, which that's really cool. I do like this area. Again, I wish this was on the first floor. There's, it's the military variant. If you're gonna take away cargo in the first place, then you might as well drop this down a level and make it make sense. Now, once you leave this room, again, you got more areas that tells you what it is. Storage, you can go ahead and open those up and store whatever you need. Back here, you got more components, so you can open these up. This is where your engine is, everything that powers this ship is back here. And you got, more relays, fire extinguisher right there, hidden in the dark. Right there. Good to see that. More component areas. I mean, this thing is littered with components. Like I said, they're size 3, so they're huge. And then if you go ahead and, crawl up this ramp here really quick, you got the bright old halo there. You don't want to head towards the light, though, because it's, probably not a good idea. Stay with us here. And then over here, of course, it is replicated on each side. So more components, more engine areas, more things to do. You got to be working on the systems back here and making sure you're taking care of things, just like our engineer here is with the engine systems, making sure everything is checked out and ready to go. So let's make our way into the next area. Habitation, crew quarters, everything you need to do when it comes to sleeping for your crew, not the people you're carrying as a dropship. So once you walk into here, you have a nice little area to sit down and eat with a little kitchen area. You can go ahead and take care of food, drink, whatever you need, sit down, discuss the next Star Wars movie. Is it gonna win, fail, flop, whatever? Who knows, right? And then over here, you open these up, you got a little area to go ahead and store some of your clothes, some of your armor, whatever you wanna store in these, you know how that goes. An area to sit down, watch some TV in the dark, and I promise you, the lights are on. They really are. I'm pretty sure of it. Let me double check here, let's see. Let's close that, let's do this. Yeah, so that's like a little off light green there. Let's go ahead and try to turn that back on. Oh, come on, give me more than this. Come on, here we go. Yeah, so the lights are on and then it kind of like dims. Now you have a bunch of beds here as well, so looks pretty decent like that. And then of course you got a couple more bathrooms, because you want to separate the bathrooms for the crew from the people that you're, bringing on your ship. So that's kind of nice. Some bathrooms, some toilets, some areas that I'm not going to enter. We got to keep away from that. Very dangerous. Player versus elevator is a thing, but it used to be player versus toilet and player versus bathroom. So I still don't trust it. And then you got some more areas for some more armor and clothes, another relay station, and then you make your way through to the main deck, right where we were before. All these areas here, storage units, more components, more storage. You got a ton of it, and fire extinguisher. And smoke coming out of the vents, always a good sign for any ship that you're on. Make your way down the hallway of Crusader Dreams, where you're gonna go door to door to door, screaming captain as much as you can to make sure nobody hears you. But you have more component access along these walls here, as well as another relay station, more component access. Let's go ahead and open it up, components for days, including shield generators and everything else. Then you have some escape pods. I wish one day these things would work, but for now they are absent. More hallways and more doors. Making our way here to the cockpit area, you have some more areas for components on each side. You have your engineer station, finally an engineer station in a proper, area, in my opinion, instead of having to run all the way to the back and bottom of the ship, like the MSR. Terrible location. You actually have it here right in the cockpit where you're going to be diagnostics and, working through any problem that you have when you're out there flying. Because you don't see the pilot of your 737 running through the entire fuselage of the ship to figure out what is going on with this aircraft. No, you don't. They're always up here in the cockpit taking care of any situation you have, so thankfully that's right here. Now here's your three positions. You have a turret operations seat here, you have your pilot seat, and then you have your co-pilot seat. So obviously this is going to be controlling, we'll just go ahead and get in each seat, kind of show you really quick, and then we'll go ahead and fly it out into the atmosphere and I'll give you my score. We'll fly into space. So let's go ahead and hit that remote turret. Now, if you hit that, you just hit remote turret. This is for the nose. Oh, can you believe this? This seat here controls the nose. I mean, come on. The nose gun should just be absent of any turret seat and should just be under pilot control completely. End of story. Because then you can make this one control the top turret and then that seat control the bottom turret. And now you have full control of your weapons. Wouldn't that just make sense? Because once you get into this co-pilot seat and my head snaps to the right, you have to turn on your systems, but then you got to enter the remote turret, right? So this is bottom control. Whoop. Lifting up the ship a little bit. Be careful when you do that. And then you have to right click and then enter turret. And then you're on the top. Like that doesn't make sense. You're not going to be able to protect your ship without having to fumble between both or setting a hotkey to switch between them quick. But you shouldn't have to do that. Each turret should be controlled by their own separate seat. And then, of course, you open this up and you can go ahead and set a handgun in here, a medical device, whatever you need. And that's pretty nice. A little storage to protect yourself as a pilot. And then let's go ahead and get into the pilot seat, which is going to shoot us through the cockpit window glass here when that malfunctions one day, and we'll be good to go here. Now, I'm going to turn on the engines really quick just to take a look at our power systems. My pilot likes to take away the coolers, but really quick, I'm going to see what it looks like with the coolers. No, I'm not. Let's see. Let's drop this down to 1, put this back to full. So yeah, it looks like your power generation system's not great because you got to occupy the radar and everything. So you will want to upgrade your power systems as soon as possible. But otherwise, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 MFDs, a little master warning system here, and then of course your radar in the middle to where you're going to be zooming in with your eyes and hoping you can see what's coming your way. The M2 Hercules. Let's go ahead and get airborne. I'll give you my score on this ship. It's a great ship, but you just have to decide. You want more health, or do you want actually more cargo grid that snaps to the grid, or do you want bombs? Bombs with some cargo grid, right? So let's go ahead and give you my score. Okay, so really quick before I give you my score, I just want to say there are some really big differences between this ship, the C2, and the A2, right? So the C2 does not have that nose gun. Okay, done. Check that off. The C2 doesn't have the armory or that, interesting drop seat area. Okay, check that off. But then the C2 has a lot more cargo, sitting at 696, even though there's no difference on the interior size of that first floor between the two ships. So they, took away a lot of your cargo. You're sitting at 522 cargo. Your seat configuration is super weird, so you have to use one turret of the other on the back instead of being able to use both. And then then you're sitting here kind of going, well, why am I dropping, 12 people off from the second floor of this ship with the elevator that takes 15 years? That just doesn't make sense. For a military drop ship that's meant to drop off massive machinery, this ship is in an interesting spot. Do you pick it over the C2 just because you have more HP, even though the C2 has 20,000 more shield? So you're kind of just trading there? Or do you pick this ship because you just want that nose gun for a little bit of extra firepower for the pilot? I mean, that's the question you got to kind of ask yourself as you buy this ship in game. Or do you just go with the A2 because it has big bombs and you just want to watch a village burn? There's a lot of questions there, but overall, my score for this ship is an 81 out of 100, just because it is still very capable. It does have a lot of firepower, not as if you're going to be able to use it all at once. It does have the ability to carry massive vehicles, and quite a few of them, and then it also has a pretty sizable cargo grid, even though it was taken away a little bit from the C2's size. Even though it's the same exact layout on the interior there, it's still got a lot of functionality on this ship, which still gives it a pretty decent score, sitting at an 81 out of 100. Let me know what you think of the Hercules M2 down in the comments below. I'd really like to hear it. Did you did you pick this one? Did you pick the C2? Did you pick the A2? I mean, a lot of people pick the A2. Big bombs go boom, right? Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you all in the next one.